Hello, everybody. All right, so welcome to the Mikestand. We're, of course, at the middle of the week, meaning, of course, everybody's favorite day of the week, hump day, because that's when we get over the hump, as it were. Um, we're going to give it a couple minutes to give people a chance to come in. I hope everybody's having a good week thus far. Well, just as I said, wait a couple minutes to give people a chance to come in. We do have a couple stories tonight. Also, our typical stuff that we do. Let's see. Come along with the snorks. Swim along with the snorks. So much to see waiting for you and me. Have some fun with the snorks. If you could breathe underwater, where would you go? You had friends underwater, who would you know? Come along and sing along too. Yeah! Come along with the snorks. Swim along with the snorks. So much to see waiting for you and me. Have some fun with the come along with the have some fun with the snorks. Hong Kong Fooey, number one super guy. Hong Kong Fooey, quicker than the human eye. Chicky chong, chicky wong, 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 wong. Hong Kong Fooey, that's terrific. Anyways, as always, guys, of course, if you guys can, you know, like and share the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Oh yeah. So anyway, so now we're coming up on 3 minutes here. So all right, so I think it's a good time to talk about what's on tap for tonight. As I said, we're gonna have a couple articles. I have a couple articles we're gonna do from Bleeding Fool tonight. One of which, of course, creators who ruin superhero comics set sights on original genres. That's going to be our first article, and then second one is going to be Dynamite's Thundercats #1 goes to second printing with Rob Liefeld's cover. Of course, we've been talking a lot about Rob Liefeld, as he recently made an announcement that he was getting ready to retire from, his Deadpool work. He's got one last story he's going to put out there, acknowledging that he's getting older and, feels that it may be time to start winding down his career. So we got that. We got, of course, obviously, the wrestling wrap up with news from WWE, AEW, and NWA. We also have, of course, the This Day Meets History segment at the also towards the end of the show. So we're now just past 4 minutes. So let's see. I'm gonna try one more time to at least get the word out a little bit here, and then I think we'll get started. Then see if there's anybody who might be on that might be interested in watching. Of course, a couple people actually. See if we can. Uh, anyways. One of talking. Anyways, all right. So I've sent out some more, in kind of reminders to some people that I think might be interested. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get started then on the material here. So let me go ahead and it's all set up to share. As always, guys, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, um, liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage and be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. We'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. I'll try to answer. So with that, let's get to this first article then. All right, so creators who ruin superhero comics set sights on, in quotes, original genres. Article by Avi Green, published yesterday. So, Ghost Machine. All right. So, is Avi speaking at this point. Comic Book spoke with Jeff Johns and Brian Hitch about the goal of Ghost Machine at Image, which sounds pretty laughable considering the role they played in dragging down the quality of superhero comics since a quarter century ago. All right, so and here's a segment. Here's a segment from the article that Avi's referencing here. Jeff Johns and Brian Hitch, two of the creators behind Ghost Machine, explain why the comic book company is spreading its wings beyond it just superhero storytelling. Spearheaded by Jeff Johns, some of the biggest names in comics have joined on with Ghost Machine, such as Brian Hitch, Gary Franks, Yvonne Reyes, um, Jason Fabok, Peter J. Tomasi, Francis Manapul, and more. Ghost Machine #1, a one-shot that provided readers with a glimpse of the four universes inside the publishing initiative, was recently released, and they span multiple genres. Jeff Johns and Brian Hitch, two of the creators behind Ghost Machine #1, discuss why they're veering away from superheroes. Comicbook.com spoke with Jeff Johns and Brian Hitch at MegaCon last weekend, where we asked why Ghost Machine is putting a spotlight on non-superhero tales. Quote, I think superheroes is less. It is a genre in itself, but it's very adaptable, unquote, Jeff Johns said. Quote, so you could have a horror-based superhero, a science fiction-based superhero. You could have a Western superhero. So we're all very aware that comics is a medium and that throughout its history, it's had everything from superheroes to romance. And that is true. For those of you who have watched the historical comic retrospect on Friday nights, you've seen that we've seen that particularly back in the golden age, right, where you do have a number of different genres that are represented. Superheroes happen to grow into the biggest of all of them, but as he said, there's Western, there's romance, there's your typical police procedural, there's gag comics, all the good stuff, right? Let's see. All right, continuing on here. Okay, okay, yep. So we use the term superhero adjacent, but they're all action, adventure, horror, science fiction stuff. It's not something that doesn't have to be differentiated from superheroes. The only thing is, we're not doing capes and tights. but it's still big budget action adventure comics. Ryan Hitch added, quote, it's interesting if you look at comic books before TV, really when TV was just getting started, they had all genres. They had superheroes, westerns, crime, romance, everything. And that's true. The early days of comics did, and so did the early days of television. You know, um, Hopalong Cassidy, um, Lone Ranger. Those were Wanted Dead or Alive, the Gunsmoke, um, the Riflemen. At least on the western aspect of it. Um, and then when TV started having westerns and romance and crime, those comics started to go away because you could only get superheroes in comics. And now superheroes are all over TV and film, and it felt like a chance to go back to all the different genres that comic books originally started with and just do different stuff. And we were planning this years ago now. It's just we've been doing superheroes most of our careers and we love them, but we all want to just do something new and different, unquote. And that's also, I think, a lot with the independent comic scene right now too. There, because you don't, granted, we have superhero comics like the Great Cyclopean and Ripaverse and all that, but all right, anyways. All right, so now we have to watch that. Good. All right, getting back to the article here then, and they say all this. Okay, so this is Avi speaking again, and they say all this long after they did such a loathsome job with superheroes. So why must we assume this new venture will be much different in terms of taste? Also appalling is how anybody who reduced superhero comics to such a quagmire could say they quote unquote love them. And the way Hitch says you could only get superheroes in comicdom is also slapdash and absurd. Because what happened, simply put, is that superhero adventures became far more favored by audiences going forward. Yeah, because you did have like in the early days of TV, you had of course the 50s, the live action Superman, Superman series, and then later on in the 60s, you had you had Filmation's the Adventures of Superman and the New Adventures of Superboy and Aquaman and all that, and you also had Marvel coming out with stuff too. Um, so, um, but it's not like non superhero comics vanished altogether during the Silver, Bronze, and Iron Age. Yeah, well, that's true too, because war comics were actually still fairly popular from even after World War II ended. Comics, um, comics, war comics of all the different, World War One, World War II, Korean War, and Vietnam War were all still fairly popular from throughout from the 40s through the well into the early 80s. So they still lasted for like 4 or 5 decades. So um, since the 90s, if you know where to look, there are non superhero comics that turned up. That aside, if Hitch and Johns could make superhero comics so crude, why must we expect their image venture to be much different? There's also a certain writer on the list of contributors who's quite alienating. And I think this is going back to the article here. Go back to the article he's referencing. Ghost Machine's mission statement reads, quote, Ghost Machine's groundbreaking creator collective was launched at New York Comic Con in October 2023, so this past October, basically, and features a global best of class lineup of artists and writers whose award-winning iconic works include a who's who of comic book legends such as Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, Aquaman, Stargirl, JSA, that's Justice Society of America for those who don't know, The Flash, the Ultimates, Black Lightning, Green Arrow, and countless more. Brad Anderson, Jason Fabok, Gary Frank, Brian Hitch, Jeff Johns, Rob Lee, Lamont Maggie, Francis Manapul, Brad Meltzer, Yvonne Race, Peter Snedberg, okay, Peter J. Tomasi, and Maital Chut. In an industry first, all of Ghost Machine's creators jointly own and run the company, sharing in all of Ghost Machine's publishing, media, merchandising, licensing. Each creator is exclusive to the company for their comic book work after completing projects already committed to, unquote. So basically, what this turned into is they're basically creating an entire company to publish this one book. That's kind of interesting. Harkening back to the golden age, I guess, when everything began. See if anybody's on it. All right. All right. So, anyways, getting back to the article here. All right. Johns and Hitch sure know how to make this a most divisive affair, recruiting the author of Identity Crisis, who's never apologized for how crude and demeaning to women he made it. And the talk of merchandise and media strongly suggests this will be another gimmick to create products for adapting to the silver screen by extension. But if I'd rather not, but if I'd rather not buy the works of these phonies in comics, so I guess Avi doesn't think too highly of these guys. I guess. Then I'd rather not associate with any adaptation to TV and film either. What did Johns mean by quote unquote less regarding superhero fare? Point. He brought it down to that much. what with the way he reduced it all to a shoddy parade of jarring violence and pointless nostalgia made additionally sour by the poor taste he injected. Exactly why I would be surprised if Ghost Machine's comics, supposedly built on adventure themes, turn out to be a little different. Anyways, all right, so there we go with that one. And we do have another one we're going to go through here. But actually, before I do get to this next article, I do need to step away from the computer for a moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, put some music on for you guys while I go. There's another reminder, of course, you guys can like and share the stream if you haven't already. And if anything here we talk about grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. But with that, I do need to step away from the computer for a moment, so I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Let's see. All right, so there we go. So now let's go ahead and get ready to move on to the next article here. All right, so Dynamite's Thundercats #1 goes to second printing with Rob Liefeld cover. Article by Chris Braley, published February 13th, 2024, which was, of course, yesterday. So let's get into this. Dynamite Entertainment. This is actually, we did do another article on this recently where they did talk about this. I think was coming out to be a pretty successful comic, it looked like. Dynamite Entertainment's Thundercats comic is a tremendous success by any metric. Critically acclaimed, the first issue has also sold over 180,000 copies. Indeed, the comic has sold so well that Dynamite has ordered a second printing with a variant of the first printing's Rob Liefeld cover. Rob Liefeld, of course, if you guys may remember, was the guy. He recently made an announcement he was going to be retiring from the Deadpool um, series soon. So Rob Liefeld's cover for the first printing depicted the Thundercats leader Lion-O with the faces of Tigra, Panthro, and Chitara behind him. The variant for the second printing presents this cover with a unique and quote unquote peel effect. The showcases This showcases the original pencils in contrast to the inks and colors of the original. Quote, it's incredibly rewarding that the fans and retailers have supported this so well, unquote, said Dynamite CEO Nick Barucci. Um, Regarding the Thundercats' first issue, Barucci noted this showing this showing is even more impressive considering its unseasonable premiere, unquote. January and February have not had as many strong launches, and it's why in our optimism that this series would do well. We launched it in February instead of pushing it to late spring. Okay, I think you meant to say late spring, early summer, unquote. There's obviously a mis typo there. The second printing of Thundercats #1 arrives in comic shops everywhere on March 13th. So, about a few weeks away there. So there we go. That one went kind of quick. That article kind of went kind of quick there. But anyways, so let's see what else we can find elsewhere. Since let me go back to Bounding in the Comics, see if there's anything that came up since I checked it this afternoon. That might be something. Right? Let's see. Yeah, probably this looks like just more about movies than anything else. Go back to Bleeding Fool here. I mean, I'm planning on saving the indie comic showcase for tomorrow, just because I know one of those things. It's one of those things that you when you look at time management, right? Yeah, you may come to a point where okay, yeah, we got plenty of time, but then you know that the one of the other things that you could use or could do to kill some of that time might kill a little too much time. Like, then what do you do? So that's yeah, again, nothing. Apparently, nothing. Not too. Some newer stuff did come out on Bounding in the Cons, but nothing like what we would normally get. More of the mainstream stuff. Hmm. All right, so yeah. So, anyways, I think we pretty much. Let's see, where are we at on time here? Wow, we're just at 30. Okay, so what else can we do then? How else can I? Let's see. Actually, I know there was something I was gonna. So, as you guys know, sometimes what we've been doing when we've had a little extra time to kill, we've gone over either animation studio histories or VA profiles. So, oh, Also, I think we might even throw in some cartoon character profiles as well. All right. Oh, yeah, I think we will do that. Actually, though, this is kind of all right. Actually, I won't do that just because it seems like it would take a little too long to do that. So what else? All right. So, anyways, let's see now. 31. So, actually, just because that one. So let's see if we can find. Probably not. Hmm. No, I think, yeah. Alrighty then. So, anyways, huh. I'm just trying to think of what else we talk about here. Well, oh, actually, today is Valentine's Day, so happy Valentine's Day for all of you out there. Um, actually, maybe that might even be a better option considering the day. Probably one of the most iconic animated characters of all time. We'll talk a little bit about Betty Boop here. I think this would probably be all right. Yeah, I think this will be a better one to do, especially considering the considering the date and stuff like that. All right, so what we're gonna do a little profile here on Betty Boop. We're gonna talk a little bit about Betty Boop here, the animated character, not the band or anything like that, according to this. So let's get into this then. Betty Boop is an animated cartoon character designed by Grim Natwick at the request of Max Fleischer. Um, she originally appeared in the uh, Talk Cartoon and Betty Boop film series, which were produced by Fleischer Studios and was released by Paramount Pictures. Mind you, she predates Popeye. She was like she and Popeye were the two big. She, Popeye, and Superman were the three big names that came out of Fleischer Studios. Um, she was featured in 90 theatrical shorts between 1930 and 1939. So over a 10-year period, that's on average about nine a year there. She has also been featured in comic strips and mass merchandising. A caricature of a jazz age flapper, um, Betty Boop, shoop boop be doo, was described in a 1934 court case as quote combining in appearance the childish with the sophisticated, a large round baby face with big eyes and a nose like a button, um, framed in a somewhat careful cofer rather, with a very small body, of which perhaps the leading characteristic is the most self-confident little bust um, imaginable. Although she was toned down in the mid 1930s as a result of the Hays Code to appear more demure, um, she became one of the world's best known and most popular um, popular cartoon characters. Among those who have voiced her over, so back in the golden age, she was, she initially was voiced by Margie Hines, and then of course some other actresses also did her little Harriet Lee, Mae Quetzal, and Bonnie Poe. So Margie Hines, Mae Quetzal, and Bonnie Poe all portrayed her. These also all three women who at one point also portrayed Olive Oyl in the Popeye cartoons. So history origins. Betty Boop made her first appearance in the cartoon Dizzy Ditches, released on August 9th, 1930. The seventh installment in Fleischer's Talk Cartoons series, inspired by a popular performing style, but not by any one specific person. The character was originally created as an anthropomorphic French poodle. For those of you who may not know what anthropomorphic means, it just simply means a character, like an animal-like character with human qualities. You know, Bugs Bunny and Yogi Bear are even Tom and Jerry, even though they don't speak, are considered anthropomorphic characters. All right, so anyways, as we continue on here, Clarabow is sometimes given credit as being the inspiration for Boop. Though Fleischer told his artist he wanted a caricature of singer Helen Kane, who performed in a style shared by many performers of the day. Kane was also the one who sued Fleischer over the signature boop 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 doop line. Betty Boop appeared as a supporting character in 10 cartoons as a flapper girl with more heart than brains. In individual cartoons, she was called Nancy Lee or Nan McGraw, derived from the Helen Kane film Dangerous Nan McGraw, 1930, usually serving as a girlfriend to studio star Bimbo. Within a year, Betty made the transition from an incidental human canine breed to a completely human female character. While much credit has been given to Grim Natwick for helping to transform Max Fleischer's creation, her transition into the cute cartoon girl was also in part due to the work of Bernard Wolfe, Otto Feuer, Seymour Needle, Roland Doc Crandall, William Bautzke, and James Seamus Culhane. By the release of Any Rags, Betty Boop was forever established as a human character. Her floppy poodle ears became hoop earrings, and her black poodle nose became a girl's button-like nose. Betty was first voiced by Margie Hines. Margie Hines, who would go on later to, of course, marry Jack Mercer and would provide the voice of Olive Oyl when Fleischer moved down to Miami in 1930, from 1938 to 1942. Later, several different voice actresses performed the role, including Kate Wright, Bonnie Poe, who was, I believe, the first voice of Olive Oyl. I think Bonnie Poe was the first woman, and eventually the role was taken over by Mae Quetzal there. Anne Rothschild, also known as Little and Little, and especially Mae Quetzal, who began voicing Betty Boop in Bimbo's Silly Scandals 1931, and continued with the role until 1939. Turning nearly 50 years later in Disney's Who Framed Roger Rabbit 1988, today Betty is voiced by Sandy Fox and Cindy Robinson, a couple of veteran LA voice actresses who you've heard a lot on a number of animes that have been dubbed by such companies as Studiopolis and Bang Zoom. So, although Betty's first name was assumed to have been established in the 1931 Screen Songs cartoon Betty Coed, this Betty, quote unquote, is a different character, which the official Betty Boop website describes as a prototype of Betty Boop. At least 12 Screen Songs cartoons featured Betty Boop or a similar character. Let's see how we're doing here. Okay. Let's see. Betty Boop was the star of the Talk cartoons by 1932. All right. And was given her own series that same year, beginning with Stopping the Show. With Stopping the Show. From that point on, she was crowned the queen of the animated screen, quote unquote. The series was popular throughout the 1930s. Since the character was created by an Austrian Jew and eventually voiced by Jewish actress Mae Quetzal, animation fans sometimes try to pinpoint various aspects that hint at Betty's Jewishness. The 1932 talk cartoon Minnie the Moocher featured the one and only appearance of Betty's parents, a strict immigrant couple who get upset that Betty does not to eat the traditional German foods, Hassenpfeffer, rabbit stew, and sauerbraten. Benjamin Ivy of Forward says that any of this evidence is ambiguous, as there are not kosher foods, and the accents of the parents are comical German accents rather than Jewish. Betty appeared in the first color classic cartoon, Poor Cinderella, her only theatrical color appearance in 1934. In the film, she was depicted with red hair, as opposed to her typical black hair. Yeah, I've seen this. I've seen that a couple of times. Kind of a cute little cartoon. Basically, Betty Boop, Betty in the role of Cinderella, obviously. At the contemporary resurgence, the Betty Boop films were revived after Paramount sold them for syndication in 1955. UM&M and National Telefilm Associates were required to remove the original Paramount logo from the opening and closing, as well as any references to Paramount in the copyright line on the main titles. However, the mountain motif remains on some television prints, usually with a UM&M copyright line, while recent versions have circulated with the Paramount Public's um, reference in cartoons from 1931. The original Betty Boop cartoons were made in black and white. As new color cartoons made specifically for television began to appear in the 1960s, the original black and white cartoons were retired. Boop's film career had a revival with the release of Betty Boop Scandals of 1974, becoming a part of the post 1960s counterculture. NTA attempted to capitalize on this with a new syndication package. Um, but because no market existed for cartoons in black and white, they sent them to South Korea, where the cartoons were hand traced frame by frame in color, resulting in the degradation of animation quality and time. And a number of the golden age 19 cartoons in the 30s, they talk a lot about this with like a lot of the Popeye cartoons as well. A lot of the cartoons that were made in the 30s were sent off to South Korea to be, to go through the coloring process, but the coloring process was considered to be kind of degraded the animation. What they basically said. Seen that note set in several times when I've looked at the notations on IMDb. So, um, anyways, let's see. Um, Timing. Unable to sell these to television largely because of the sloppy colorization, they assembled a number of color cartoons in a compilation feature titled Betty Boop for President to connect with the 1976 election, but it did not receive a theatrical release. The release of the film on videocassette for home viewing created a new market for the films in their original form. The American Movie Classics channel, cable television channel, or AMC as we know it today, showcased a selection of the original black and white Betty Boop cartoons in the 90s, which led to an 8-volume VHS and LV set, Betty Boop: The Definitive Collection. Some of the non-public domain Boop cartoons, copyrighted by Republic successor Melange Pictures, in parentheses, Viacom CBS holding company that handles the Republic Theatrical Library, have been released by Olive Films under Paramount's license, while the Internet Archive hosts 22 Betty Boop cartoons that are public domain. There's the history of Betty Boop. Let's see how many parts are there to. All right, I think we'll continue on here with the. So how was Betty Boop portrayed? Sex symbol. Betty Boop is regarded as one of the first and best known sex symbols on the animated screen. She is a symbol of the Depression era and a reminder of the more carefree days of Jazz Age flappers. Her popularity was drawn largely from adult audiences. The cartoons were seemingly surreal, contained many sexual and psychological elements, particularly in the 1932 talk cartoon Minnie the Moocher, featuring Cab Calloway and his orchestra. Cab Calloway, of course, a famous jazz musician. And on the right here, of course, is the 1932 drawing of Betty Boop. Minnie the Moocher defined Betty's character as a teenager of the modern era, at odds with the old world ways of her parents. In the cartoon, after a disagreement with her strict parents, Betty runs away from home, accompanied by her boyfriend Bimbo, only to get lost in a haunted cave. A ghostly walrus, rotoscope from live action footage of Calloway, um, sings Calloway's song, quote unquote, Minnie the Moocher. Accompanied by several other ghosts and skeletons, this haunting performance sends the frightened Betty and Bimbo back to the safety of home. Quote, Minnie the Moocher, unquote, served as a promotion for Calloway's subsequent stage appearances and also established Betty Boop as a cartoon star. The 8 talk cartoons that followed all starred Betty, leading her into her own series beginning in 1932. With the release of Stopping the Show in August of 1932, the talk cartoons were replaced by the Betty Boop series, which continued for the next 7 years. Betty Boop was unique among female cartoon characters because she represented a sexual woman. Other female characters of the same period, such as Minnie Mouse, displayed their underwear or bloomers regularly in the style of childish or comical characters, not a fully defined woman's form. Many other female cartoons were merely clones of their male stars, with alterations in costumes. Yes, we've seen it like with Mickey and Minnie Mouse, Donald and Daisy Duck, Porky and Petunia Pig. Um, let's see. The addition of eyelashes and a female voice, Betty Boop wore short dresses, high heels, a garter, and her breasts were highlighted with a low contoured bodice that showed cleavage. In her cartoons, male characters frequently try to sneak a peek at her while she is changing or simply going about her business. In Betty Boop's Bamboo Isle, she does the hula dance, hula wearing nothing but a lei. Yeah, I know that one. I believe that one kind of caused controversy. A lei, for those of you who don't know what a lei is basically the kind of like flowery necklace, that you see a lot of Hawaiians wear. It's they usually when you get off a plane in Hawaii, let's say the Hawaiian girls will greet you and put a lei on you. Strategically placed to cover her breast and a grass skirt. This was repeated in her first cameo appearance in Popeye the Sailor, 1933, basically the debut of Popeye the Sailor, of course. A certain girlish quality was given to this character. She was drawn with a head more similar to a baby's than an adult's in proportion to her body. This suggested the combination of girlishness and maturity that many people saw in the flapper type which Betty represented. Let's see. While the character was kept pure and girl-like on screen, compromises to her virtue were a challenge. The studio's 1931 Christmas card featured Betty in bed with Santa Claus. Oh boy. Winking at the viewer. Oh boy. Oh boy. The talk cartoons. Yeah, I'm sure Mrs. Claus really felt really like that. Betty, what are you doing with my hubby? Let's see now. The talk cartoons, the Bum Bandit and Dizzy Red Riding Hood, both 1931, were given distinctly impure endings. Officially, Betty was only 16 years old, according to a 1932 interview with Fleischer. Although in Bum Bandit, she is portrayed as a married woman with many children and with an adult woman's voice, rather than the standard boop boop ba-doop voice. Now, okay, I'm gonna respond to that. You have to remember too, there was a time in our country, right, where you did have 16-year-olds who were actually married and did have a family. Okay, now maybe in this specific cartoon, she was depicted as being older than she was in other cartoons. But you know, there are even many states today where the age of consent, age of marriage, could be as young as 16. So, um, let's see. Attempts to compromise her virginity were reflected in Chestnuts, 1932, and most importantly in Boop Boop a Doop, 1932. In Chestnuts, the Black King goes into the house where Betty is and ties her up. When she rejects him, he pulls her out of the ropes, drags her off to the bedroom, and says, quote unquote, I will have you. The bed, however, runs away, and Betty calls for help through the window. Bimbo comes to her rescue, and she is saved before anything happens. In Boop Boop a Doop, Betty is a high wire performer in a circus. The ringmaster lusts for Betty as he watches her from below, singing, quote unquote, do something, a song previously performed by Helen Kane. As Betty returns to her tent, the ringmaster follows her inside and sensually massages her legs, surrounds her, and threatens her job if she does not submit. Betty pleads with the ringmaster to cease his advances as she sings, quote, don't take my Betty, don't take my boop boop a doop away, unquote. Coco the clown is practicing his juggling outside the tent and overhears the struggle inside. He leaps in to save Betty, struggling with the ringmaster, who loads him into a cannon and fires it. Coco, who remained hiding inside the cannon, knocks the ringmaster out cold with a mallet. While imitating the ringmaster's laugh, Coco then inquires about Betty's welfare, to which he answers in song, he couldn't take my boop boop a doop away. According to Jill Harness of Mental Floss, of mental floss. These portrayals of Boop fighting off sexual harassment on the animated screen made many see her as a feminist icon. Hmm. All right, we're gonna go through this part right here, the under the production code, and then we'll wrap. We'll start to wind things down. Hmm. All right, we still got two. Okay. And again, guys, if you haven't already, if you can like and share the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and/or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, anyways, just make sure. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, anyways, under the production code. So this is them talking about Betty Boop during time when what they call the Hays Code of the production code came into effect here. Betty Boop's best appearances are considered to be in her first 3 years due to her quote unquote jazz baby character and innocent sexuality, which was aimed at adults. But the content of her films was affected by the National Legion of Decency and the Production Code of 1934, also called the Hays Code, which imposed guidelines on the motion picture industry and placed specific restrictions on the content films could reference with sexual innuendos. This greatly affected the Betty Boop cartoons. All right. So I'm going to go off camera here for a quick moment. I'll be right back as soon as I can, of course, put some music on while I'm gone. Come on. All right, I'm back now, so let's get back to this. All right, so let's continue on then now. Let's see. No longer a carefree flapper from the date the code went into effect on July 1st, 1934, Betty became a spinster housewife or a career girl who wore a fuller dress or skirt. Additionally, as time progressed, the curls in her hair gradually decreased in number. She also eventually stopped wearing her gold bracelets and hoop earrings, and she became more mature and wiser in personality compared to her earlier years. Right from the start, Joseph Breen, the new head film censor, had numerous complaints. Breen ordered the removal of the suggestive introduction and had started the cartoons because Betty Boop's winks and shaking hips were deemed suggestive of immorality, quote unquote. For a few entries, Betty was given a new human boyfriend named Freddie, who was introduced in She Wronged Him Right, 1934. Next, Betty was teamed with a puppy named Pudgy, beginning with Betty Boop's Little Pal, 1934. The following year, the addition of the eccentric inventor Grampy, who debuted in Betty Boop and Grampy, 1935. And often they would suggest that Grampy may have actually been Betty Boop's grandfather, grandpa, basically. But while these cartoons were tame compared to her earlier appearances, the self-conscious wholesomeness was aimed at a more juvenile audience, which contributed to the decline of the series. Much of the decline was due to the lessening of Betty's roles in the cartoons in favor of her co-stars, not to mention Fleischer's biggest success, Popeye. This was a similar problem experienced during the same period with Walt Disney's Mickey Mouse, who was becoming eclipsed by the popularity of his co-stars, Donald Duck, Goofy, and Pluto. Since she was largely a musical novelty character, the animators attempted to keep Betty's cartoons interesting by pairing her with popular comic strip characters such as Henry, the Little King, and Little Jimmy, hoping to create an additional spin-off series with her pairing with Popeye. In 1933, none of these films, though, generated a new series. When the flapper jazz era that Betty represented had been replaced by the big bands of the swing era, Fleischer Studios made an attempt to develop a replacement character in this style. In the 1938 Betty Boop cartoon Betty Boop and Sally Swing, but it was not a success. The last Betty Boop cartoon was released in 1939. And a few made attempts to bring Betty into the swing era in her last appearance, Rhythm on the Reservation. Betty drives an open convertible labeled Betty Boop's Swing Band through a Native American reservation where she introduces the people to swing music and creates a swinging Sioux band. The Betty Boop cartoons series officially ended with Yip Yip Yippee in 1939. While Yip Yip Yippee appears to be the end of the Betty Boop series, it's actually a one-shot about a drugstore mail-order cowboy wannabe without Betty, which was written mainly to fill the release schedule and fulfill the contract. All right. Oh, there we go with that then. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Finding out a little bit more about Betty Boop. So now we're past the hour mark. So what I'm gonna do now, of course, is we're gonna move on to the wrestling wrap up real quick, and then we will go ahead and then start wrapping up with this day in each history, and then and go on from there. So, anyways, first off, in WWE news, of course, The Rock continues to play up his new heel character with some tweets on X. Again, just highlighting his slap of Cody on Raw this week. Let's see. Actually, what we can do too is we can look at the NXT results here. So on last night's NXT, you had Metaphor of Naomi Dar and Oro Mensa defeat Mr. Stone and Von Wagner. In a gauntlet match, Ridge Holland outlasted Gallus, the three members of Gallus. Lola Vice defeated Tatum Paxley. Jida Parker defeated Adriana Rizzo. Carmelo Hayes defeated Joe Gacy. Kiana James defeated Brinley Reese. And you have new NXT Tag Team Champions. Baron Corbin and Braun Breaker defeated the family of Tony D'Angelo and Chenny Lorenzo. Of course, this is the first gold that Corbin has held in 7 years. First time since 2017 that he has held gold. So that's all we got for the WWE portion of the wrap up. Now, talking about AEW, as on tonight's Dynamite. Well, actually, even before that, let me go to NWA first because NWA was on last night. NWA Power last night saw Knox and Murdoch go to a no contest against the Southern Six members of Kerry Morton and Alex Taylor. In a title unification match to unify the men's and women's men's and women's world television titles, Maxie Impaler defeated Mims. The Immortals retained the United States tag team title over Slimeballs. All these matches, of course, were part of the Paranoia event a few weeks ago. And then in the main event, Silas Mason retained the national heavyweight title over Burchill. So we have that. And then for tonight's AEW event on the card tonight for Dynamite. And of course, they did announce this weekend that due to the NBA All-Star Game, Collision will not be airing this Saturday. So no Collision this Saturday, but on tonight's Dynamite, you had John Moxley taking on Dax Harwood. You had the BCC's John Moxley taking on one half of FTR, Dax Harwood. Former NWA World Junior Heavyweight Champion Barrett Brown took on Wardlow in a number one contenders match for the TNT title to see who would face Christian at Revolution. Adam Copeland was taking on Daniel Garcia. The Young Bucks are in tag action against Top Flight. Willow Nightingale was to do battle with Sky Blue, and in a non-title Texas Death match, Orange Cassidy taking on one half of the Kingdom OGK of Matt Taven. So that's all I got for you on the wrestling wrap up. So now let's go ahead and talk about go ahead and get into this day in each. Today it's Valentine's Day. It's February 14th, 2024. So let's take a look back at this day in each history. So 499, 2014, and 2004. All right, so without any further ado, let's take a look back at this day in history. First off, we're going to head back 50 years ago today. As on this date, 50 years ago today, the 25th issue of Dark Shadows from Gold Key went on sale on this date back in 1974. 50 years ago today, it sold for 20 cents for 32. The 25th issue of Dark Shadows, the comic book adaptation of the cult classic Dark Shadows, then Curtis Productions cult classic Dark Shadows, went on sale on this date back in 1974. It sold for 20 cents. It's 32 pages. Now moving on to the next piece of niche history here. Moving ahead to 1999. On this date in 1999, the 27th installment of In Your House, St. Valentine's Day Massacre, took place at the Pyramid Arena in Memphis, Tennessee. On the Sunday night pre-show, you saw Viscera defeat Test by so among the matches on the night, so on the main event, Steve Austin defeat Vince McMahon in a steel cage match. In a last man standing match for the WWF Championship, went to a draw between champion Mankind and challenger Rock. China and Kane defeated Triple H and X-Pac. In a match for the WWF Intercontinental Championship with Billy Gunn as a special guest referee, Val Venus defeated Ken Shamrock to become the new Intercontinental champion. Jeff Jarrett and Owen Hart retained the WWF Tag Team Championships over D'Lo Brown and Mark Henry. In a match for the vacant Hardcore Championship, Bob Holly defeated Al Snow. This is following the previous week's vacation of the title by Road Dogg. Goldust defeated Blue Dust. And that's at least many of the main matches. So on this date, 25 years ago today, In Your House, St. Valentine's Day Massacre occurred from the Pyramid in Memphis, Tennessee. Now, moving ahead to 2004, which was just 20 years ago today. On this date, 20 years ago today, Toei Animation Saint Seiya, the Healed Battle of the... Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry, not... on this date, actually, the Saint Seiya movie, Heaven Chapter Overture, premiered in Japanese theaters on this date back in 2004. So 20 years ago today, Saint Seiya, Toei Animation Saint Seiya, Heaven Chapter Overture, premiered in Japanese theaters on this date back in 2004. And now, moving ahead to 2014, 10 years ago today, directed by M. Strange, the independently produced animated film I Am Nightmare premiered on this date 10 years ago today. So on this date, 10 years ago today, the independently produced animated film I Am Nightmare was released on this date 10 years ago today. So with that, I thank everybody for being here. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. We'll be back here tomorrow. Of course, we'll be doing the Indie Comic Showcase. We'll be back doing them on Thursdays now, unless, of course, things stay slow news-wise. But with that, I thank everybody for being here, and of course, this Friday, of course, I'll have Rex Christian on from Devil Flyers. We will be looking back to comics that went on sale in January 1940 with Prize Comics Volume 1, Issue 1. So with that, I thank everybody for being here. Hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.